"Are you deaf, old man?" I said, "Move it." The voice, sharp and laced with the unearned confidence of youth, cut through the quiet hum of the naval amphibious base gym. Vernon Ford, his back to the speaker, continued his methodical sweeping, the rhythmic scrape of bristles on concrete the only reply. He was tracing the edge of the wrestling mats, a place of honor and exertion, now just a space to be cleaned. The young Navy SEAL, glistening with sweat and radiating impatience, stepped closer, his shadow falling over Vernon. "Hey, I'm talking to you. We need this space. Go empty a trash can somewhere else." Vernon stopped. He slowly straightened his back, each vertebra seeming to click into place, a process that spoke of age and miles logged. He turned, his face a roadmap of 70 years, his eyes a calm, pale blue. He didn't speak, just held the young man's gaze. This quiet defiance, this utter lack of intimidation was the spark. The SEAL, used to being the most formidable presence in any room, felt a flicker of something he wasn't accustomed to, being dismissed. "What's your problem? Did you not hear me?" he snapped, his voice rising. Another SEAL, toweling off nearby, chuckled. The confrontation had an audience now. Vernon's gaze remained steady, his hands resting on the worn wooden handle of the broom. The air crackled with unspoken challenge, the vast difference between the janitor's quiet stillness and the warrior's coiled energy creating a tension that promised to snap. The young SEAL, whose name was Petty Officer Slate, took another step forward, closing the distance until he was nearly chest to chest with the old janitor. The gym, usually a cacophony of clanking weights and grunts of effort, seemed to grow quieter as others took notice. Slate was built like a pillar of muscle and arrogance, a product of the most grueling training pipeline in the world, and he was used to deference. Vernon, by contrast, was lean and wiry, his maintenance uniform hanging loosely on his frame. He smelled faintly of cleaning solution and old coffee. "Look, Pops," Slate said, his voice dropping to a low, condescending growl. "This isn't a nursing home. This is a place for warriors. We need the mat, so take your broom and shuffle off." Now, Vernon's expression didn't change. He simply blinked, a slow, deliberate motion. "The floor needs to be swept," he said, his voice raspy but clear. "Keeps the dust down. Better for breathing when you're exerting yourself." The simple, logical statement seemed to infuriate Slate even more than silence had. It was so civilian, so mundane. "You think I care about dust?" Slate scoffed, a humorless laugh escaping his lips. "I've been in conditions that would make you cry yourself to sleep. Now, for the last time, get out of the way." He punctuated the command by shoving the end of Vernon's broom. The broom clattered to the floor. Vernon looked down at it, then back up at Slate. There was no anger in his eyes, only a profound weariness, a deep and abiding disappointment. The surrounding SEALs, a mix of young operators and a few more seasoned veterans, were now fully invested. This was a diversion, a bit of casual sport at the expense of the hired help. They saw an old man being put in his place by one of their own, a reaffirmation of the pecking order. The strong versus the weak, the warrior versus the worker. Vernon bent down, his movements careful and measured, to retrieve his broom. As he did, the collar of his uniform shifted, pulled taut by the movement. For a fleeting second, the skin on the back of his neck was exposed, just below his hairline, and on that weathered skin was a tattoo. It was faded, the lines blurred by time and sun, but its design was unmistakable to anyone who knew what they were looking for. Slate didn't notice. He was too consumed by his own dominance. He saw Vernon stoop as an act of submission. "That's better," he sneered. "Now you're learning." But someone else did see it. Across the gym, leaning against a weight rack and observing the scene with a practiced neutrality, was Master Chief Petty Officer Thorne. He was in his late 40s, a command-level operator who had seen more than his share of combat zones and cocky young SEALs. He rarely intervened in these sorts of contests, believing that a little friction helped forge teams. But as he saw Vernon bend over, his eyes narrowed. He pushed himself off the rack, his own workout forgotten. He had seen that tattoo before, not in person but in books, in grainy photographs from a bygone era of warfare, an era that predated the SEAL teams themselves. It was a small black trident, but it was interwoven with a sea serpent, its tail coiled around the base. It was the mark of the underwater demolition teams, the frogmen of World War II and Korea, the progenitors of the very warriors who now filled this gym. And more than that, the specific coiling of the serpent signified something else entirely, a membership in a unit that was spoken of only in whispers and legends. Slate, emboldened by his perceived victory, wasn't finished. "You know, we should get you a new uniform," he said loudly to his friends, though his words were aimed at Vernon. "Maybe one with a little bib on the front, in case you drool." A few of the younger SEALs laughed. Vernon straightened up again, broom in hand, and looked past Slate, his gaze settling on Master Chief Thorne, who was now walking toward them with a deliberate, unhurried pace. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed Vernon's face. Recognition, and perhaps a hint of resignation. He hadn't wanted this. He had just wanted to do his job. He had come to this place seeking quiet, a way to be close to the world he had left behind without having to be in it. He had swept these floors for 3 years, unnoticed, and that was exactly how he liked it. Thorne stopped a few feet away, his eyes not on the belligerent Slate but locked on Vernon. His face was unreadable, a mask of professional calm. The laughter died down as the younger men noticed the Master Chief's presence. A Master Chief on the gym floor was not unusual, but one who looked at a janitor with such unnerving intensity certainly was. "Is there a problem here, Petty Officer Slate?" Thorne asked, his voice quiet but carrying an authority that instantly cut through the lingering bravado. Slate snapped to a semblance of attention. "No, Master Chief, just asking the janitor to clear the area." Thorne's gaze didn't waver from Vernon. "His name is Mr. Ford," Thorne said, the Mr. delivered with a subtle but unmistakable emphasis. He then looked directly at the back of Vernon's neck, a silent confirmation of what he had seen. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture that seemed impossible. The tattoo on Vernon's neck seemed to burn under the Master Chief's gaze. It was a relic of a different time, a symbol inked into his skin in a smoky tent on a remote island in the Pacific, a lifetime ago. It depicted a coiled serpent wrapped around a trident, its fangs bared. It was not just any unit insignia. It was the mark of the NCDU, Naval Combat Demolition Units, the original frogmen, the men who swam into enemy harbors with explosives strapped to their bodies, clearing the way for invasions. As Vernon stood there, the fluorescent lights of the modern gym seemed to fade, replaced by the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. He could feel the humid, salty air on his skin, hear the distant rumble of artillery. He remembered a young man, barely 20 years old, sitting on a crate as a grizzled chief with a makeshift needle etched the symbol onto his neck. It was a promise, a pact sealed in ink and pain. Each man in their small, specialized unit received the same mark, a symbol that they were part of something secret, something dangerous, something that would bind them together forever. They were ghosts, tasked with missions that would never be officially acknowledged. The tattoo was their only uniform, their only medal. It was a silent testament to the beaches they had cleared, the ships they had sunk, and the brothers they had lost in the crushing deep. To the uninitiated, it was just an old faded tattoo. To those who knew, it was a piece of living history, a mark of almost unbelievable valor. Master Chief Thorne, his mind racing, knew he couldn't let this escalate further in public. The legacy represented by that tattoo was too sacred. But he also knew he couldn't just order Slate to stand down without an explanation, and this was not the place for that conversation. He needed to make a call, and he needed to make it now. He gave Slate a look that could strip paint. "Go, all of you, hit the showers, now." The command was absolute. The young SEALs, confused but obedient, began to disperse, casting curious glances back at the old janitor and the Master Chief. Slate hesitated for a moment, his pride stung, but one more look from Thorne sent him moving. Once the immediate area was clear, Thorne turned his full attention to Vernon. "Mr. Ford," he said, his voice now laced with a deep, almost reverent respect. "I apologize for the behavior of my men." Vernon just nodded, his eyes distant. He was still half a world away, lost in the echo of the past. Thorne knew he was walking on hallowed ground. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over his contacts. He had one person to call, a man who would understand the gravity of the situation immediately. He found the name Commander Jacobs, the base commanding officer. He stepped away, turning his back to give Vernon a measure of privacy. "Sir," Thorne said into the phone, his voice low and urgent. "Master Chief Thorne here. I'm at the SEAL gym. You need to come down here, right now." There was a pause. "No, sir, there's no emergency, not in the traditional sense. Do you know who the janitor is? An older fellow named Vernon Ford?" Another pause as the commander likely searched his memory and came up blank. "Well, sir," Thorne continued, his voice dropping even lower, "I just saw a tattoo on his neck, a coiled serpent around a trident. It's an NCDU mark, sir. The old teams. But it's more than that. I think, sir, he might be one of the Mako unit." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. The Mako unit was a legend, a ghost story told to new recruits, a team of frogmen from the Korean War era rumored to have undertaken missions so sensitive they were erased from official records. Finding one of them, alive, sweeping a gym floor, it was unthinkable. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." The commander's voice finally came back, stripped of all its earlier casualness. Don't let him leave. Thorne ended the call and turned back to Vernon, who was now quietly sweeping again, as if the entire confrontation had never happened. The Master Chief simply stood and watched, a guardian now, waiting for a history he had only read about to come crashing into the present. Inside his office on the naval base, Commander Jacobs stared at his phone, the Master Chief's words still echoing in his ear. Mako Unit. It was a designation he hadn't heard spoken aloud in years. It wasn't in any active personnel files or official histories. It was a phantom, a piece of institutional lore. He immediately swiveled in his chair and logged into a secure Naval Archives database, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He typed in the name, Vernon Ford. The initial search came back with minimal information. A standard service record from 1950 to 1954. Honorable discharge. Basic frogman qualifications. Nothing special. But Jacobs knew that the most sensitive records were often buried, protected by layers of archaic classifications. He initiated a deeper search using a command-level override code. This time a single flagged file appeared. It was heavily redacted, most of it blacked out, but one line was visible. Operation Mako, sole survivor. See addendum file X-Ray 7. He didn't have clearance for X-Ray 7. Nobody below the level of a Navy admiral did. His blood ran cold. The janitor sweeping his gym floor was the sole survivor of a ghost operation. He grabbed his cover and was out the door in seconds, his mind reeling. The quiet dignity Vernon displayed, the utter lack of fear, it all made a terrifying kind of sense now. Back in the gym, Petty Officer Slate, his ego still smarting from the Master Chief's dismissal, decided he wasn't quite finished. He had showered and changed, but the image of the old man and the Master Chief's inexplicable deference gnawed at him. He walked back out onto the main floor, feigning that he had forgotten something in his locker. He saw Vernon still cleaning, with Thorne standing nearby like a sentinel. This was his chance to reassert himself, to show he wasn't intimidated. He strode over, a smirk plastered on his face. "Hey, Pops," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "You should be careful. All this dust, it can't be good for a man your age. We wouldn't want you to have a fall, would we?" He looked at Thorne, a silent challenge. "Maybe it's time for you to be in a home. We could even call them for you. Have you evaluated? Make sure you're—" It was a vile, cruel insinuation, a direct attack on Vernon's age and competence. He had crossed a line, moving from simple arrogance to outright malice. Thorne's jaw tightened, and he took a half-step forward, but Vernon subtly raised a hand, stopping him. The old janitor looked at the young SEAL, and for the first time there was something other than weariness in his eyes. It was a flicker of pity. Just as Slate opened his mouth to say something more, the main doors to the gym burst open. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. Standing there was Commander Jacobs, his expression grim and resolute. Behind him were two Marine guards in full dress uniform, their presence a shocking and inexplicable sight in the middle of a SEAL training facility. And behind them, visible through the open doors, was the commander's official vehicle, a black sedan with flags mounted on the fenders, its lights still flashing. The few remaining SEALs in the gym froze, their eyes wide. This was a level of command presence that was almost never seen on the gym floor. This was not a casual visit, it was an arrival. Commander Jacobs strode directly toward the scene, his eyes locked on Vernon Ford. He ignored Slate completely, as if the young SEAL were nothing more than a piece of gym equipment. He ignored the Master Chief. His entire world in that moment had narrowed to the quiet, unassuming janitor holding a broom. The commander stopped directly in front of Vernon Ford. He drew himself up to his full height, his posture ramrod straight. The Marine guards took up positions on either side of the entrance, their faces impassive. The gym was utterly silent. Commander Jacobs's eyes scanned Vernon's face, then dipped for a fraction of a second to the faded tattoo on his neck. His own expression was a mixture of awe and disbelief. He had seen the redacted file. He knew who he was standing in front of. He was standing in the presence of a legend, a man who had sacrificed his youth in the darkest corners of covert warfare. Then, in a move that sent a shockwave through the room, Commander Jacobs, the commanding officer of the entire naval amphibious base, snapped his heels together and rendered a sharp, perfect salute. It wasn't a casual gesture. It was the salute one renders to a Medal of Honor recipient, to a visiting dignitary, to a figure of immense and profound importance. The two Marine guards, seeing their commander's action, followed suit, their white-gloved hands slicing through the air in unison. "Mr. Ford," Commander Jacobs said, his voice clear and ringing with authority. "I am Commander Jacobs. I want to personally and professionally apologize for the disrespect you have been shown in this facility." He held the salute, his eyes locked on Vernon's. Slate was frozen, his mouth agape, his face a mask of utter confusion and horror. Master Chief Thorne stood at a respectful distance, a look of profound vindication on his face. The commander lowered his salute but remained at attention. For the benefit of those who are unaware, he announced, his voice now booming through the silent gym, "This is Vernon Ford. Before he was a janitor here, he was a frogman. He was part of a naval combat demolition unit during the Korean War." He paused, letting the words sink in. He was a member of a specialized three-man team under a clandestine program known as Operation Mako. Their mission, which is still largely classified, was to swim into the harbor at Wonsan, North Korea, ahead of the main invasion force, and disable the submarine nets and mine clusters protecting the harbor. They did this with no breathing apparatus, using only knives and handmade explosives, in near-freezing water, under the cover of darkness. He then swam for another 2 hours, evading capture, and was the sole survivor of his unit to return to friendly lines. For his actions, he was secretly awarded the Navy Cross, an award he never spoke of, a mission that was erased from the books to protect operational security. He is not just a veteran, he is a hero of the highest caliber, and he deserves nothing less than the absolute and unwavering respect of every single person on this base. The story hung in the air, a stunning testament to the quiet man holding the broom. The few SEALs who had been watching, their faces now pale with shame and awe, slowly, one by one, began to stand taller, their posture shifting from casual observers to soldiers in the presence of greatness. Commander Jacobs turned his gaze, now cold as steel, onto the petrified petty officer Slate. "You," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "are a disgrace to that uniform. You mistake arrogance for strength. You mistake age for weakness. This man, this hero you chose to mock and belittle, has more valor in his little finger than you have in your entire body." The commander's voice rose again. "Master Chief Thorne, you will personally escort this petty officer to my office. He is on report. He will issue a formal written apology to Mr. Ford, and starting Monday, every single operator in this command, from the newest recruit to the most seasoned veteran, will attend a mandatory course on naval history, with a specific focus on the contributions of the UDT and the men who built the legacy that you all take for granted." He then turned back to Vernon, his expression softening once more. "Mr. Ford," he said gently, "from the bottom of my heart I am sorry." Vernon finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady, carrying across the silent gym. "Son," he said, looking not at the commander but at the shame-faced Slate, "respect isn't in the uniform you wear, it's in how you wear it. The strongest man isn't the one who can lift the most weight. It's the one who can lift others up." He looked down at the simple broom in his hands. "There's no shame in any job, as long as you do it with dignity." The faded tattoo on Vernon's neck was a testament to that dignity. It was born in the crucible of war, a symbol of a promise made in the face of impossible odds. He remembered the night vividly, huddled in a makeshift tent. The mission briefing had been simple and suicidal. They were to be ghosts. If they were captured, they were disavowed. If they died, their bodies would never be recovered. Before they left, their chief, a hardened man who had fought at Normandy, pulled out a small kit. He said, "The Navy won't give you a medal for this. They won't even admit you were here. But we will know. We will remember." And he had inked the coiled serpent around the trident onto each of their necks, a permanent private medal of valor that no enemy could take and no politician could erase. It was a symbol of their quiet, deadly purpose. The fallout from the incident was swift and decisive. Petty Officer Slate was formally reprimanded and assigned to remedial duties for a month, a humiliating but educational experience that involved cleaning the base's facilities alongside the civilian staff. The mandatory naval history course was implemented immediately, with the first session taught by a local historian and featuring a surprise guest, Vernon Ford. He didn't speak for long, but he shared a few stories, not of heroism but of the camaraderie and sacrifice of the men he served with. His quiet words carried more weight than any lecture. A few weeks later, Slate, his arrogance stripped away and replaced by a newfound humility, approached Vernon as he was locking up the supply closet at the end of his shift. "Mr. Ford," he said, his voice barely a whisper, I wanted to apologize in person. What I did, there's no excuse. I was wrong." Vernon looked at the young man, really looked at him, and saw the genuine remorse in his eyes. He simply nodded. "We all make mistakes, son," Vernon said. "Be a better man tomorrow than you were today." He patted the young SEAL on the shoulder and walked away, leaving Slate standing in the hallway, a lesson in true strength and quiet valor etched forever in his mind. If you were moved by Vernon's story, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Veteran Valor for more stories of the unassuming heroes who walk among us.